the stronger you look and the better affiliations, partnerships, the more often you're collaborating with other companies, especially companies that you see as a potential acquirer of your company, and they get to meet your management team and date you for a little bit, and you're solving some problem for them, and they're seeing the results of that, and you're doing that as a peer, right? You're doing that as an equal. Those are the ones that come back around and go, geez, maybe we should just buy these guys. And, especially if they're a public company, they're looking to put more revenue on their books, especially if they want to get to market in a certain sector and you've already got a get to market solution and they don't have it and they don't want to have, it's not that they couldn't invent it, but why when they can buy it? Those are the ways to get acquired. Virtually every successful acquisition that I see or sale of a company that I see is done with somebody that you're already very good friends with. It's not somebody now that might be different if you have a McDonald's franchise or a dry cleaner or something. It might be different. You just go to a business broker, put it on the market, somebody that's rolling up lots of dry cleaners and they need one in Dayton, Ohio, they'll buy it. But if you're doing something where you're doing something a little more obscure, a little more niche, and you're looking for a better valuation, I think the best way to do it is identify people that you want to work with in advance, that you think might want to buy you, make friends with them, do stuff with them, prove your value, and you'll be surprised how often they'll come to you and suggest doing an acquisition.
And so, earlier you mentioned something interesting. You said today's young people expect everything to happen fast, and ultimately they're looking to get out as quickly as they got in just for a lot of money. Tell me a little bit about what has been your experience with maturity level on a company, like 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. How long has it taken for people to really be considered experts in their work and, having provided the value on a consistent basis enough to make them valuable enough to be acquired?
Well, it's an interesting thing. Let's go back to real estate as an example. If you have a great house, but it sits on the market for a while, then people quit looking at it. Right. And so if you've been around for a long time and you've never really made a splash, then you may not seem that exciting to a broad number of acquirers. Whereas if you come in, I'll tell you, I've got one of my clients right now that I'm coaching them on the growth of their business. They opened up just over 2 years ago, 3 people, 0 revenue with an interesting software idea. They're now up to 47 or 48 people, did 25 million in sales last year, and are looking to more than double their growth this year. So that sounds like a pretty exciting group. They came to me to say, this is getting away from us. The growth is getting away from us. What do we need to do to kind of keep our arms around this sucker because it's growing too fast? So I don't know if it has to do with how old you are in business. I think it has to do with, again, what we said at the beginning. How interesting and innovative is what you're offering? Is there a demand for it in the market? And does it look like your team is the team that can really be the go-to supplier of that service? It doesn't really matter if you're a year old. I had an interview on my podcast yesterday with a guy who just teaches you how to tell your story. And there's a million people that tell you how to tell your story, but he's got a very interesting methodology. So what's happened is he's been only doing this as a standalone business for 2.5 years, but he's gone from 0 to almost 10 million in sales because he developed a methodology that separates him from all the other people that want to tell you how to be a good speaker, tell you how to find the interesting parts of your story. His methodology sets him apart from a big red ocean of other people in the same space.
Right. No, I understand. And, one of the big issues with exits that comes up is valuations. Everybody has a different thought about what their company's worth based on revenue, right? Everybody thinks they're worth 10 times what they're doing in a year,
Sure.
et cetera. I mean, why not? Why would you think any less of yourself and the work you put in, right?
we fall in love with the things that we make,
right.
And so it's just like, not everybody has a beautiful baby, but your baby is the most beautiful to you, right? And so, look.
But I mean, based on the reality you see out there, like, is there a realistic formula? Not necessarily like an equation, but what I mean is is there a way for someone to get a realistic assessment on what they're worth? I know a company's only worth what someone's willing to pay, like no different than whatever else, but is there a way to really put a worth on something and say, well, realistically, this is our worth, you know?
I think so. My answer is what you just said. It's whatever somebody's willing to pay for it, because you can. It doesn't. See, here's the deal. I looked at a company recently to buy, and they have good revenues. They have a good client base and so on, but they're in a market that I believe is dying. And even though it may have a lifespan of another 8 or 9 years, I think they're only going to go down in value. So I looked at them, and I thought, well, what's the database worth to me? What's the cash flow worth to me, assuming that I have the time to keep messing with them? So I came in at a much lower price that I was willing to pay than their business valuation specialist they hired had given them, based on revenue and based on current profits. Because the fact is not the fact, my belief is they're going down in value, even though they're solid today. So what am I really buying? I'm going to hopefully buy some cash flow and a database that maybe I could do something else with. I don't think they'll end up selling to me, because I don't think they'll believe what I valued them at. Here's the deal. Are you on the uphill side? Are you flat? Are you on the downhill side? Are you in an industry that there was a great movie in the late 80s or early 90s called Other People's Money. And it was all about this company that had been around for 100 years that made copper wiring. And they'd been around forever, and they'd built bridges and telephone networks and been super important for all these years. But the fact was that the industry was moving towards fiber optics, and copper was going to be less useful. And there was this whole realization of the future, not just the current, and certainly not the past. IBM used to make adding machines. Now they don't make International Business Machine doesn't make any machines anymore. They're a consulting industry, or a consulting business. So they had to utterly change from the original industry they're in order to even still be viable. So I don't know. I've got friends right now who have really cool companies that are doing 40, 50 million in sales, that have a valuation of 125 million. But even though their valuation is 125 million, they can't sell the company. And they're actively working to sell the company, right? So I don't know. It's an interesting thing. The other thing is, I was just talking to a buddy of mine who owns 60 or 70 hotels, and they're like mid-price hotels, like Quality Inn, Comfort Inn, those kind of hotels. And he was talking to me about how he's able to buy up a lot of mom and pop hotels and put them under his management, because he's got economies of scale and systems in place. So he can buy something at a really deep discount and make it really valuable, because instead of them having to do everything themselves, he's now doing this over a whole, dozens and dozens of hotels. So his value, he might see a way that he could pay a little more than what the mom and pop could get on their own, because he can turn it into a cash cow quickly with his systems and his economies of scale, his consolidated accounting, property management, and so on. So I don't know. It's such a moving target to put a value on something. The best way to do it that I've seen is to, like I said, get involved with people that are potential acquirers and let them see how valuable you are and see where the deficit that they actually have. Because a potential acquirer is always going to say, we don't really need you. We're the big dog. We're the ones with money. If they can all of a sudden see through interaction with you where they really have a deficit and how you really fill that space, that void, all of a sudden you become more interesting to them. But the most important thing is people ask me all the time, when are you going to sell Laughlin? And Laughlin is now an amalgamation of about 6 incorporation companies that I bought up at different times and eventually merged them all into one big dog. And people say, when are you going to sell this? And I've had numerous offers to merge and partner or be sold. And I always say, why would I sell this company? This company is like, it's an annuity. It just keeps working. And as long as businesses exist, there's always going to be a place for that as long as we stay relevant. It's like an ATM machine. But it wasn't that way. It was a dog when I bought it because it had been run like a mom and pop. Now it's run like an enterprise business that's really a medium-sized company. And we have fabulous management, great customers, high renewals, and so people buy and buy. That's only done by applying systems that work in every industry over and over and over again so that you end up with something valuable.